With COVID-19 sprouting up all over the country again, thought we needed to bring in two experts to help us get the answers to how we can recover from this pandemic. Find out how coming up next. I'm Eric Mitchell, and this is To The Point. It's To The Point Tuesday, so that means we're going to get to the point on today's news. And what is breaking all over again is the huge spike in positive COVID cases across the country. As we've all heard, the state of Florida again is winning and screwing things up for our country by once again having no rules. In fact, 2 months ago said, oh, we're fine, we're good, you don't have to worry about it. And they had everybody on the beaches and restaurants everywhere, nobody wearing a mask. And guess what happened? They had the highest cases. So I'm sitting here at my desk last week going, what would be a great guest for us to talk about everything? Also, as we all know, I talk about Broadway. I love the arts. And tragically, almost 2 weeks ago now, Nick Cordero passed, an amazing Broadway actor who had a very well documented fight with COVID-19. He was 41 years young, and this man in good health suddenly came down with COVID-19, like so many New Yorkers did. At first, one of the symptoms that came out was he ended up having a left leg amputation, and unfortunately, just a few short weeks later, lost his battle with COVID-19. So one of our guests today, I really was excited to bring on our show again to discuss what's going on, because I didn't understand all the medical journals I'm reading about the new data coming out on COVID-19, and one of the symptoms has been a lot of amputations. Really blew my mind. So that is one of our guests today. I thought that's why we should base the show on this. Before we get to that, before we get to both our guest names, I do want to share one of the big concerns I have for everything going on. And I've seen a lot of things said online, on everywhere. When it comes to COVID-19, we've been asked to wear masks. We've been asked to look out for one another. The mask isn't for your protection. You're actually giving protection to someone else. I don't know why we have to lecture each other and tell each other that, by the way, wearing a mask is not something you can fight constitutionally. And no, you can't be arrested for not wearing a mask. You can be thrown out of businesses because they have the right to refuse you. If you've ever seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High, come on, we've all seen it. Sean Penn walks in, he does not have his shirt on, and Judge Reinhold goes, hey, it's Spicoli, what's the sign say? No shirt, no shoes, no service. It's a bummer, dude. Same thing, wear your mask, they have a right to throw you out. So stop with this whole dissertation and you're being part of the problem. And I'm looking at you guys, and I'm not going to try to make this political, but wear your mask. Wear your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask. I don't care. If you have a reason not to wear your mask, then don't. If you legit have a medical reason that you don't, then don't. But we have to take care of one another. That's how we cure this. Because if you look around, not everybody is having hot spots come back. We are. But a lot of other countries aren't. And a lot of states are doing a good job. But we're going to lose more if we continue this. And we've got to fight for our small businesses. So don't make this a left or a right thing. Don't make this an election 2020 issue. This is how we keep our small businesses, our restaurants, our mom and pop shops that we all love and support. So keep them open. So do your part and keep them open, and don't make this political. Don't. You sound dumb when you do it, so don't make it political. Just wear your mask. So that's my breakdown for today's, just please, because I want to keep it this is an intense episode. I'm very excited to talk about both topics. So the first topic, like I said, Dr. Shah will be here. He's our first guest today, and we're going to be talking a lot about signs to check for COVID-19, and it all starts in your legs. I know they're like, that's not the symptoms. Your legs are the gateway. They're like, they're the gateway drug to the rest of your body, apparently. And second of all, our second guest, as I was learning about COVID-19 and our initial response in early March, and as we went into April, learning where we get our supplies from, our pharmaceuticals, everything, I was shocked and stunned to see that 95% of pharmaceuticals across the globe come from China. Crazy. Here in the United States, we are completely dependent on them. I was blown away by that stat because talk about an enemy who can destroy you single-handedly without even having to fire a shot. If they control what we're dependent on and we don't have another trading partner, we're either going to spend way too much money or not have it or have to come up with it. So I was wondering where we could get the answer to this. So I found this amazing entrepreneur for you guys to listen to and to hear from, who owns a pharmaceutical company. He's one of the leaders in pharma. He's a gigantic leader in the cannabis industry. And he's here to tell us about a trading partner we haven't thought of, that we can work with, that can turn our transportation time, our pharmaceutical needs, even in a pinch, in a pandemic, they could get here in 2 hours, not 45 to 60 days. And as someone who actually is a trading partner that we work with all the time, and in fact we have agreements with, and we don't have tariffs on, that we can work with and get things to our country and help their economy at the same time. So I'm excited to welcome both our guests today. So let's get to the point with our first guest, Dr. Shah.
LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class. Are you a veteran or patriotic business owner, author, musician, public speaker, or entrepreneur? Are you ready to take the next step towards success? Then look no further than LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class. LifeFlip Media is the #1 veteran-owned PR firm in America. We use our mission-oriented approach to secure advertising and media exposure for your business, your brand, and your products. It's time to let LifeFlip Media put you on the cutting edge of success. LifeFlip Media, the voice of the warrior class.
And welcome to the show, Dr. Shah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Eric. Thanks for having me again on the show.
I'm glad to have you back. I wish we weren't talking about COVID-19 and we were just having a chit-chat, but unfortunately COVID-19 is still very much on the forefront of everything we're hearing about. And I know you have a lot of insight on amputations and COVID-19, and we're seeing a rise in cases where folks, while they battle COVID-19 and they're younger, they're losing extremities or being amputated. And most recently, Broadway star Nick Cordero, who we unfortunately passed on, he had a 13-week fight, but what really brought media's attention is during his fight, he actually lost his left leg. What is going on with COVID-19 and amputations?
Yeah, no, I think what happened with Nick is obviously a tragedy of epic proportion, and my heart goes out for his entire family, who have to deal with this. And it does bring up a lot of valid points worth discussing. Some of this, in my opinion, media has really missed the boat on. So, again, I wasn't the attending physician in this case, so I can't comment on the specific details, and look like there was a valiant effort made. But there are really two major issues, I think. One is COVID-19 and peripheral vascular disease, causing these blood clots and issues that COVID is causing by itself, as well as the treatment of COVID can also lead to that. But a second, bigger, major issue that I feel like no one's talking about is amputation. I haven't seen anyone in media bringing up the dire consequence of amputation that millions of Americans still go through every day. So, with COVID specifically, COVID is a hypercoagulable disorder, and it has caused issues with amputation by causing blood clots, which COVID causes in the arteries and as well as in the veins in the lower extremities, as well as some of the treatment that very severe patient of COVID requires a device called ECMO, which can perfuse the lungs, but this is a big bulky device, and it can also lead to pressure on the leg arteries and eventually can lead to lack of blood flow, causing the amputation. But to me, the more important issue is, we're talking about this amputation at a micro level, but I think at a macroscopic level, there are millions of individuals in the United States till this date living with amputation. And amputation itself is a bad news in terms of it causes tremendous impact on patients' livelihood, their longevity in terms of how long they can live, as well as the quality of their life. And it's a burden on them, their families, and the society in general. And people who have amputation, their risk of survival is as bad as stage 4 cancer, and no one even talks about it. So I think these are the two really major issues that should be brought to forefront. And I wish major organizations like Amputee Coalition and media in general would have taken the opportunity to raise awareness for millions of individuals in the United States who have peripheral arterial disease and have amputation and deal with this.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that the survival rate of an amputee is that of stage 4. I mean, I know several folks in the service that have been either involved in helicopter crashes overseas or hit by IEDs in combat, and they are amputees. And, I'll give them that. I have a good friend of mine. She attempted to climb Mount Everest. She made it to Hillary Step with missing her left leg above the knee. And she could have kept going, but everybody who was with her couldn't. So it's kind of crazy that she did that. But I know it is hard. The amputation, it costs a lot of money. It's amazing how these legs go together.
It's a huge burden. I mean, the average cost of amputation, once a person gets amputation, is $100,000 per patient per year, because they, large majority. I mean, the example you are giving is obviously phenomenal, and there are people who rise above any occasion, and they live to show, and I mean, going back to Nick's story, obviously, it seems like he fought valiantly with this. And there are examples like this, but large majority of the folks, the millions of individuals, over 200,000 amputations that people who go through amputation every year, these are diabetics, these are people with high blood pressure, cholesterol, these people have kidney disease, and they don't even realize that they have circulation so poor that they could lose their limb. So, again, amputation can happen in a more dramatic, rapid situation, like the war veterans or helicopter crash, but that's less than 20% of the amputation in the country. Larger than 80% of the amputation happen because of this disease progression, which is completely preventable, which is something that could be picked up by patients, by their healthcare providers, and by bringing attention, because the treatment is phenomenal and you can prevent 80% of the amputation. And yet people, even in 2020, go through these amputations, and again, as I said, more than 50% of them will not live more than 4 or 5 years. And those who get amputation, their likelihood of getting amputation on the other limb is like astronomically high, like almost higher than 10 times than any other individual. And obviously they don't have the quality of life. And right now, as you know, race in America is a big issue, right? Racial equality. And it baffles me when I see everyone from both aisles, both parties talking about, racial equality and where do we stand. And I don't think these conversations are complete without talking about the racial inequality when it comes to healthcare in general, but especially when it comes down to amputation and diabetes and peripheral arterial disease. Because if you happen to be African American or a Latino or any minority, your risk of peripheral arterial disease and diabetes and amputation is way high. And we saw that in COVID. People who were of color unfortunately ended up having worse outcomes. So I think this is a lot of conversations are tied, and this story really brings it up to the forefront.
So let me ask you. So you say that this can be prevented. So let's talk about that. How do people do it? Obviously, the IEDs, those are different. You're right. I mean, there's only, I think, 24 million veterans in America as it is, so that it narrows it down. But obviously, there are healthcare measures that people can be taking. Not everybody has COVID-19, like Nick.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a rise. But how do people prevent it?
This is the crazy part. More veterans end up losing their limbs, not because of war or any war-related injury. More veterans, I want to say 10 times more veterans end up losing their limbs later on in their lives because of peripheral vascular disease. So even amongst veterans, when we talk about amputation, it happens way more commonly because of these underlying risk factors, which again, as I said, are completely preventable.
It's bananas. So how do they prevent it? Let's just talk about that. Let's talk about prevention of amputation. How do people do it? How, if you're watching now and you're like, crap, I have a lot of people we know in America have diabetes, or if you're worried about getting COVID-19, which it's spreading, and depending on who you talk to in what medical capacity, or you ask our friends on social media, which everybody seems to be an expert, not just on COVID-19, but civil rights and the military lately. How do we keep people healthy and to stay away from amputation being this, leading them down the road to amputation?
Yeah, so as I said, most amputations happen because of peripheral arterial disease, which is lack of blood flow to the legs. Very easy to pick up by simple testing. More often than not, just simple physical exam, checking people's pulses, make sure they have good pulses. So just seek attention. Early detection and screening is name of the game. So if most people think that they get leg pain because of age, I can't tell you how many times people come to us and say, oh, my legs are hurting because I'm old, or I have arthritis. Like 80% of the time, if they're diabetic, they do have circulation problem, and it's a problem that people don't think about it because it's not on their mind. There is not enough awareness about it. So most people think, oh, it's age related, it's diabetes causing some nerve problem, some arthritis. No, in reality, they have serious peripheral vascular disease. So talk about it with your healthcare providers. Seek attention. If you have pain, discomfort, discoloration, if the legs have those blue-black spots, or the skin color is changing, or if they have open wound or an ulcer that's not healing. Oftentimes people get a little bit cut in the skin in between the two toes, and that's not been healing for like few weeks or few months. And that's what we call non-healing diabetic foot ulcer. Diabetic foot ulcer or non-healing ulcer is again a biggest precursor of amputation, because these people with diabetes, they have critical limb ischemia, which basically is saying lack of blood flow to the leg. So in the heart disease world, we all understand heart attack. We all talk about heart attack because there is awareness about it. Anytime somebody has crushing chest pain, people immediately think they're having a heart attack, and they go either to their doctor or the ER and get attention. Same way, people don't think about the legs causing leg attack or a foot attack. But I always tell my patients, and whenever I'm trying to educate the referring, some of our primary care doctors, I tell them that think of a foot attack or a leg attack. You have a complete substrate based on your risk factor like diabetes, smoking, high blood pressure causing this issue, and then you're waiting for a foot attack which will come and will lead to potentially very dangerous consequence like losing a limb. So get attention, get screened, just ask your healthcare provider, get the pulses checked. The blood pressure test of the leg, everyone knows about blood pressure test of the arm. There is a very simple way to check leg circulation by taking blood pressure of the leg at different levels. We can check blood pressure at the thigh, at the knee, at the ankle level. And the name for that is called ankle brachial index, or ABI. It's a simple, very effective, every insurance covers it. Even if insurance doesn't pay for it, most doctors will do. We provide free screening for any folks who need this ABI. It's a pretty straightforward, easy test, and it will pick up more than 90%, I want to say 96% actually, based on the studies, in terms of sensitivity and specificity to pick up disease. So that's why number one tip, if you ask me, is detect it. Talk to your healthcare provider and get this easy test. Number two, if you have an ulcer or wound that's not been healing, talk about it, see if there are simple, effective endovascular treatment. People think that if you have peripheral arterial disease, fixing it is a huge problem. You need you need surgery and cut down. No, those days are gone. Nowadays, we can fix most of these blockages with simple catheter-based treatment that takes less than an hour in most cases. And you can fix these blockages, and this problem that has been going on for years and years, you can at least reverse it to a degree. And obviously, number three goes without saying is risk factor control. If you're a smoker, obviously it's not a good idea. If you are diabetic, make sure you get checked, make sure you are on all the appropriate medications, and obviously exercise. Exercise, eat healthy, and things like that. So prevention, early detection, and then seek treatment if needed.
I love that you say that. So let me ask you a question, because I've been reading some literature here, and it talks about the fact, and I was just thinking of myself when I read this a couple days ago, that a lot of doctors in primary care, they're not examining patients' feet as much as they should. A lot of people, I can't tell you that I've been to a podiatrist, but I can tell you I get a physical at least once a year. And I can tell you, yes, I understand. I learned in the military real fast that our feet are the cornerstone to our life. Trust me, it's why they always tell us to, change our socks when we do long hikes. And I understand my feet are the most sensitive part of my body. My family makes fun of me because of this. I swear I end up on the ground if I stub my toe, but you can hit me anywhere else and I'm fine. But my toe, I'm done. I'm on the ground.
Yeah.
But why do you think so many doctors, how do we go? Do we just ask our doctor to examine our feet? I have a physical coming up. I'm curious because I want to know, because I'm this foot attack, you're the first person to bring that to my attention. And it's concerning because our feet are probably, for most of us, our primary way of getting around.
Absolutely. I always say legs are the windows to the heart. And unfortunately, there is lack of awareness even among some of our colleagues, physician colleagues and healthcare providers in general also. We always say that rate of feet exam in the office, most doctors' office, is less than 5%. So it's an unfortunate, it's a sad reality. I think all the peripheral vascular disease societies are trying to raise awareness that everyone's feet should be examined, especially if you're diabetic. In each doctor's visit, not only by examining, you take the shoes and socks off and feel the pulses, feel the temperature, see if there is swelling, edema, discoloration, all that stuff. It takes less than 5 minutes really, to do the thorough exam, and you can potentially prevent major issue. Legs are actually second heart. Most people don't realize your calf muscles, your calves are actually like a second heart because it's what we call the calf pump, right? Heart is a pump. Job of the heart is to pump blood that goes from the heart to rest of the body. When the blood has to come back, the leg muscles have to push the blood back. So if you go back in the literature and look at the ancient Greek, who were the first in medicine, they call calf as the second heart because that what pushes blood back to the heart. So legs are so vital to our heart health, our overall health, that it should be paid attention. So I think if you are a patient or a person and going to your doctor's visit, and if you have risk factor, 100% you're gonna mention that I want to make sure that you check for my circulation, check my pulses are okay or not, and if they're not, get tested.
Awesome. So let's talk about this. A lot of people, we're talking about PAD or peripheral arterial disease, but a big misconception that I've been reading is that it only impacts the elderly. And we hear this a lot even with COVID-19, but we've recently heard from the experts, including the CDC and the WHO, that actually the age group is much younger for COVID. Is that the same for PAD or peripheral arterial disease? I learned a new word today, and I'm using it in a sentence just to be like you, Doc. I want to be like Dr. Shah.
It is getting more and more common, right? A lot of this literature, a lot of these statistics come from like older data, older trials. And back in the day, people would not, if you were in your 40s and 50s, you would not even get tested because the misconception is, PAD only happens in old people, so there is no need to check for it. But in reality, we are seeing, and the lifestyles have changed. The stress level in younger people in their 40s and 50s has gone tremendously high. So we are seeing all the risk factors much earlier. People we are seeing high blood pressure much earlier. We are seeing high cholesterol much earlier. So we are seeing all this stuff. So along with it, we are seeing peripheral arterial disease also very common. The cousin of peripheral arterial disease is peripheral venous disease, which is venous insufficiency, which is way more common. It doesn't necessarily lead to amputation. It can cause like really bad varicose veins, ulcers, swelling, discomfort, which is also not just a cosmetic issue. It's a major lifestyle issue. And we are seeing that way younger. I'm seeing that in people in their 30s and 40s even. So, these diseases are getting, definitely getting much earlier. Part of it is because now we have easy technology to detect it. So we are finding them faster and easier. Part of it is because our lifestyles have changed. Today's like 40 and 50-year-old are going through way more stress than, what people used to go way back. So, absolutely. And in COVID, we are seeing obviously that, yes, if you're older with risk factors, your likelihood of getting disease is way higher, and especially the fatality is way higher. But even younger folks, unfortunately, like Nick, sometimes can succumb to this disease and get really rapid decline.
Yeah. So let's go back to that. So we talked about Nick, and obviously he lost his leg, and obviously ultimately lost his life to this. So I know that there's this going around, and I've read it several places, so I'm going to ask you about it. They say PAD is basically, some people believe it's not fatal, but clearly Nick proved that it is, and I'm not laughing, but there's always somebody out there that says something's more of a nuisance than fatal, and you're like, and then how are people dying from it? That seems more than a nuisance. Dying is not what I want to happen. If there's a way I can prevent it. So how do we change that misconception that people should be looking everywhere, not just the standard? The problem is, and I'm sure you see this, is WebMD is not the ultimate place to go when you have a symptom. It's like when you have a cold and you Google it and you find out you could lose all of your limbs and you're not going to survive, and it's the common cold. What should folks do when it comes to taking this serious? I mean, number one, this is fatal, right? If you get these symptoms, you could die.
Yeah. So again, I think COVID is obvious. We are in unprecedented time. I think this is a rare time in the history, and I hope we can go over this hump. But symptoms have to be taken very seriously, and we are seeing that COVID is on rise in so many states. I live in New York, and I practice in New Jersey, and in these states, finally, after months and months and months, the curve is starting to flatten out. And even now, I tell my patients, my friends, family, do not put your guard down, because we don't know when the curve can go back again and when the second wave can come and hit us. So putting the guard down has never been good, especially in a current circumstance and situation. And I think you gotta do the safe practice. Seek attention. Nowadays, talking to your doctor is not that difficult. Apply common sense when it comes to prevention. Keep the distance and and all like the social distancing measures. I don't even want to go through it because everybody has gone through it. But if you develop symptoms, don't ignore it. Get tested. Talk to your healthcare provider. Get tested, because there is an off chance this could be COVID, because people sometimes think, oh, I'm young, I won't get COVID. No, that's not true. You could get COVID as a young person. Misconception is like, I don't know anybody who had COVID. I didn't get in touch with anyone. You have no clue, because right now the spread is community wide, and you could have caught it from somebody who was asymptomatic. So again, always go with the possibility that you as a young individual could possibly also have COVID. So first thing is, if you have any symptoms, stay away from others and get tested. And if you have COVID, it's okay. There's no reason to panic right away, but beware of the possibility that this could turn into something fatal very quickly. And it definitely should not be ignored. It definitely should not be taken lightly. We're not there yet.
Awesome. So let me ask you. This is the elephant in the room with anybody who's in the medical field today. This ongoing debate in our country. I live on the West Coast. I know New York has done a great job with this. Wearing a mask. It's huge. People fight it, but I think I've been one of the first people when I've flown internationally. I've worn a mask when I fly, just because, number one, before COVID-19, we all, honestly, if you've looked aboard an aircraft and you thought that we weren't spreading germs to each other sitting like cattle in those airplanes, you're naive in the first space.
Yeah, germs are always there.
But there's a lot of people fighting masks, doctor. And what's your thought on that? Obviously, you're a medical professional. These masks do help. And if they keep businesses open, which is key, that way we could still go to the doctor, go to the barber, go to the grocery store and not infect each other. And clearly it is spreading. I believe as of this recording, we're at 130,000 Americans alone have died from this disease. Florida is in an all-out, their numbers are tripling daily. Texas is seeing the same thing. New York and New Jersey, you guys are doing good. We're doing pretty well here on the West Coast. Some cities, I know California's been punished. How imperative is a mask? Because we hear people, it's just, masks do help, right?
I think a regular mask is not protecting yourself, right? I think this is a perfect example that how we are all intertwined in this society and our fabric is so interwoven. So when I wear a mask, I'm protecting you, and I expect the same from you, that you wear a mask to protect me. And together, you and I wearing a mask, we are protecting our businesses, we are protecting our society, because we are allowing these businesses to slowly start, so I like this phased opening that most governors are doing all across the country, and I think you can debate and argue the timing of it, but we do need, businesses to function. We need society to start moving, especially, in healthcare, because there is a secondary crisis, for example, COVID brought, right, is is those people who had, for going back to our original conversation, those people who had peripheral arterial disease and vascular disease and heart problems, they did not seek attention because they were too scared to come to the office, and that has led to its own set of issues of not seeking attention early on. So the society sort of has to move on, especially when it comes to healthcare. We do need like non-COVID care as well. So wearing this mask enables us, by me protecting you and you protecting me. So I'm all for it. You can argue the merits of it, but I don't think there is any data that it harms anyone or it hurts anyone. And there is plenty of data that it actually does prevent the spread and germs. Now, COVID may change some people are saying it is mutated and it's less fatal than what it used to be. We don't have enough evidence for any of that. So until we have enough evidence and until the curve is truly flat in each state, each region, the guard should not, nobody should put their guards down. So I'm all for everyone wearing a mask.
I love that you said that, because you said something key that I think everybody should hear. And the problem is we don't have enough medical professionals on the air saying what you said. It's not helping you, it's helping others. Wearing that mask prevents, because we still see it. I was just talking to this with a guest earlier about the biggest problem we have is how many times, since January, you're a doc, so you obviously tell people to cover their face when they sneeze and, wash your hands and all these very simple things that people need to be told now in 2020, which is weird. I tell my teenagers, hey, make sure you wash your hands. That's something I've told them since birth. But we're seeing it more and more, and it's good that you brought that up. The mask is to help the masses. And, we have, obviously you're a guy who goes into surgery, so rocking a mask is part of your uniform of the day when you do it. It is something new for a lot of us to wear one all the time. But you see people, it's affecting my heart. No, it's not. You're not going to, I don't think anybody's going through suffering, and I see you laughing, so it makes me feel good that I know I'm right. You guys?
No, 100%. We wear N95. During the COVID crisis, even right now, right? Anytime we are doing any procedures, sometimes when people have these leg blockages, we are doing these procedures, and depending on the number of, I had a patient, for example, who had COVID and had complete clot of the entire leg, had just huge thrombus and huge clot. Perfect example. He was young. He was in his 50s. Perfect example that how COVID is causing limb loss, because, he had huge blood clot. Luckily, he had truly a foot attack. Luckily, we got him right away. And this is back when hospitals were still figuring out how to deal with COVID patient when they need procedures or surgeries. And, we had to make some phone calls and get special permission saying that if we don't operate on this guy right away, he's going to lose his limb and he's going to possibly down the line lose his life, but right now he's going to lose his limb. So we spoke with the hospital administrator. They allowed actually the entire team to do procedure, and this is I'm talking early March. So nobody knew but this hospital administrators had the balls to basically allow this, and so this was unprecedented. We had to do this procedure. And some of this huge clots can take a lot longer than our traditional procedures. So this was a 3 to 3.5 hour case. And we all wore N95 mask, and not just one, because this was so early on, we were all worried about it. So we put an N95, we put a second mask on top of the N95 mask, and we put a face shield on top of this. And now you're doing, and then you have a gown, and then you wear a lead because you're under the X-ray. On top of that, you have another gown. So we have four layers, if you may. And you cannot break scrubs because we all had only one N95 mask. This is when there was a shortage of PPE. So we were all given only one mask. So you can't really break the scrubs during the procedure, anything like that. And we had to deal with it, and we dealt with it. And none of the team members in the operating room died. It was difficult to breathe through the 3 or 4 layer of mask, but it's okay. You deal with it. And we not only we were okay, we were successful in opening this blockage, and the guy saved his limb and potentially his life from this. And these are the tough situations we are in, and we do it. And you're a veteran, if you're in army, you have to be tough. So when I hear people complaining about this, I kind of get it. I don't want to make fun of people. Some people truly have underlying respiratory conditions, and even a simple mask can make it a little bit difficult for them. But it's not that difficult. And, you don't have to wear it all the time if you're not surrounded by people and you're more than, you're not in a crowded area, you can take it off, So, but if you're in a crowded area, it's very easy to deal with.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest issues, and then we'll wrap here. But a lot of people, you're seeing rallies and different stuff where social distancing isn't being maintained. People aren't wearing masks because they're under some misconception of the world that their Constitution, which, by the way, I've read the Constitution, there's nothing about masks in it. I checked. I'm 100% positive it's not covered in the Constitution, so wear a mask. It's funny how people are ignoring and trying to blame, say, two doctors, the one we see on TV all the time, the amazing Dr. Fauci and Dr. Drix. Here are two trained professionals telling you to wear a mask. They're wearing masks. You doctors are wearing masks. You're all it's not like you guys are in a gigantic club going, we're all in on it together. We're telling everyone. No, you're wearing it because you know the hard data. You've been to school. So I think the takeaway is wear a mask. You don't, like you said, you don't have to wear it.
I think what happens is some people are not seeing the dire consequence of this deadly disease the way we in healthcare get to see it on a day-to-day basis, and I think sometimes if it's not in front of your eyes all the time, you kind of miss the big picture. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I think COVID-19 is real. Masks do protect to a degree. We are still learning more about it. We are gathering more data. So unless we have more evidence, more robust evidence, it's a relatively simple thing to do. And I think it allows the society to function, which I think is very important. Businesses can open, society can function, which reduces the other healthcare burden and society burdens.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. We just wear your mask so we can continue doing stuff, so you can still go to your doctor's appointments, so you're catching these things, you're get your hair cut, your nails done, whatever you need to do, go grocery shopping. I know New Jersey probably doesn't want to hear talk about eating in restaurants, but most of us still can do that, except in New Jersey. You guys messed up, wear your mask. But I know in New York you can dine in. I know here on the West Coast, a lot of us can still dine in restaurants. It's wearing masks. It's a pain. Trust me, I have teenagers. And it's one of those things that we have masks in all of our cars now because it was one of those things where you leave and forget. So it's something it takes getting used to. We're all not doctors, so wearing them all the time and being part of our day isn't used to it, and we're getting better at it, but obviously I want to thank you, Dr. Shah, for joining us today. This has been an amazing conversation that I think we need to have you back on maybe once a month, every couple of months to talk about what's going on, because number one, I never knew that your legs and your feet are the way to the rest of your body and how severe this is that a lot of people don't check. And again, I'm not kidding when I said no one has ever hold on, let's check your feet when I'm looking at stuff, and I'm blessed with or cursed with really large calf muscles. So when you were talking about there's your second heart, I'm like, man, these things cramp up. I'm always flexing and stretching these things. I drive myself nuts. I blame my Peloton for that. But, it's good that you're bringing light to this. And I think so many people need to know. And I think Nick Cordero's passing really woke up people. 41, didn't have, I haven't looked at his medical records. Obviously, and you're not his physician. But, he was in pretty good health, according to everything I read. 13 weeks in the hospital. Within 2 weeks, he had already lost his leg. He never left the hospital. 13 weeks, he passed. So you brought a lot of good light to people, and I hope people are taking advice. So where can people find out more information near you? Obviously, you're in New Jersey, so folks can follow your website. Where should folks connect with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah. So once again, I do want to say my biggest regards to Nick and his family. Obviously, it's an epic tragedy. I hope media and all of us can take some valuable lessons from this in terms of raising awareness. I hope that we can keep talking about this huge issue. The amputation and peripheral arterial disease, and do not miss the boat on that. I'm available anytime, so thank you for having me on the show. Anyone has any question, can always ask me on our website. I'm also on all social media, and I'm sure the link will be there somewhere. So please, any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll love to be of any help, assistance, or any answers.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dr. Shah, for joining us, taking time out of your day to talk with us. I've learned a lot. If anybody else, I learned something, so I'll take that to the bank. So thank you again, Dr. Shah, and we'll be right back with our next guest coming up after these. welcome to the show, Jonathan. How you doing today?
Doing well, Eric. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing good. So here we are. We're in month, I've lost track, like 4 of COVID-19. It's getting serious again out there. And I know you and we've had a lot of conversations offline. We've seen you on, different radio shows here in America talking about the dependence that we have on China. And I think a lot of people figured out at the very beginning of COVID-19 how dependent we were on China. How long has this been going on? Like, is this something recent, or have we been caught behind the barrel with China for a long time? Because our second question for you is going to kind of lead into where else can we go with this. And I know that's how you've done it, because you're one of the few pharmaceutical guys I know that does nothing with China at all. So what's our dependency with China? What's going on there?
Well, let me address your first question. All of this happened in about 50 years, if you think about it. That's how quickly they were able to overtake the entire world and start producing medication and essential medication over in China. I mean, the way I see it is China ended up playing chess. We ended up playing checkers. Short-term political gains. They saw a long-term strategy. They got government subsidies, low labor, cheap labor, and ended up transferring all of the intellectual property and intellect, for that matter, because if you take all the scientists, all the chemists that lost their jobs here in the U.S. and the jobs were transferred over to China, they took everything over there for very cheap labor. We taught them everything. They undercut prices for any other company manufacturing the same ingredient in the Western Hemisphere. By undercutting the prices, they drew these companies out of the market. And they pretty much ended up having a monopoly. And now they control the vast majority, if not more than 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients. So you might come to or go to your pharmacy to fill your prescription medication, and there might not be any medication available for you. And it's intertwined. I mean, it's much more elaborate than that, as you well know. And we can get into it if you'd like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what I'm amazed by is this recent U.S. Department of Commerce study that found 97% of the antibiotics used in the U.S. now come from China. I mean, it's amazing how dependent we are on them, that they could literally cut us off. And, I mean, that's a problem.
But the interesting thing about the antibiotics is it's actually, yes, we're dependent on antibiotics, but antibiotics are being abused. And not only that, antibiotics themselves are primarily the cause for the antimicrobial resistant superbugs that we're seeing going on right now. And because of the lack of oversight in China, a lot of these antibiotic manufacturing facilities are dumping antibiotics into the environment, into livestock, even into what the water and the food supply. And this is creating an environment for these superbugs to emerge. There's no one overlooking. There's no responsibility. There's no environmental thoughtfulness when manufacturing. So not only do they control it, but the fact that they control it, they don't run it properly, is creating a lot of these superbugs that you're starting to see, that you've seen with the virus, that you're going to start seeing with other viruses already popping up. Especially, the swine flu, H1N1 that came up, and today was a beautiful one, the bubonic plague.
I guess it's better
expect
than the killer hornets.
Expect more of those.
So let me ask you this. So, okay, if we didn't work with China, obviously I don't think the U.S. can handle all of this on its own. And obviously you have to have trading partners. I know that your background is you are Colombian by descent. So
Actually, I'm not. I was born here in the U.S. in Miami, but I grew up in Colombia.
Awesome. So, I mean, Latin America, I'm familiar with companies that are down there. I've done some work down there. I know that there are companies that are using it. Some amazing veteran-owned companies like Combat Flip-Flops have open factories that were old cartel factories, that they're doing amazing things, and their products are being made down there by the amazing people of Colombia, which is very amazing culture, amazing people that they work really hard. I know Microsoft has a big push down there. You're seeing IBM down there when IBM was big, but IBM's halfway decent now. They're huge still in Latin America. Obviously, the soda companies. So Is Latin America a great place for us to trade with? I think it is. I'd like your thoughts on it and why it would be better than using China.
Oh, first things first. If you look at the population of the Western Hemisphere, let's just take the Western Hemisphere, including Canada, U.S., Mexico, and all the way down to the Ushuaia Peninsula of Argentina, we're talking about 1 billion people. If you take the population of China, we're talking about 1.5 billion people. Doesn't that make sense already? That you want to leverage some of your production to this part of the world where it's less populated? Number one. Number two, you have a very, very good, educated, talented workforce in Latin America. And a lot of this workforce is fluent in English. So conducting business with someone that speaks the same language as you is going to be much easier. Try doing that in other parts of the world.
Sure.
Number two, geographic proximity. If I were to board a flight tomorrow and want to audit my facility in Colombia, surprise audit, I want to see how you guys are doing, I'll be there in 2.5 hours. It's a 2.5 hour plane ride. So proximity, geographic proximity allows you to have oversight, allows you to go see the operations that are manufacturing whatever it is. In this case, we're talking about medicine. So it's much easier to look after these factories. Plus, you don't have governments that are opposed to having U.S. regulators come in, as they do in China or other places. If you consider the fact that we wanted to go look at what was going on with COVID-19, we were blocked. You're not going to have that. So you have geographical proximity. You'll be allowed in. You have a very well qualified intellectual workforce that's fluent in English, right? The other factor is the dollar as it stands right now is relatively strong. So it goes a long way, right? So you will be able to manufacture at a reasonable cost if you move some of the production down there. Yes, and you're right. You're not going to be able to handle all of the production that you want here in the U.S., even though the moment that China entered the World Trade Organization, there was about 5 million jobs that were lost and about 50,000 manufacturing facilities that were shuttered, right? Think about this. You have an issue at the southern border. Everybody wants to come to this country. Why does everybody want to come to this country? This is a land of prosperity. If you're able to put in if you're able to allocate a percentage of the 170 billion, which is the API market's value of 2019, to these Latin American countries, what you're essentially doing is you're pumping money into these economies. You're creating jobs, and this is going to actually help with your issue at the southern border. So I might as well just giving you about 5-6 different reasons, right?
Yeah.
And I can go on.
I mean, I love it. I mean, but I have other questions because it's going to come up that, like every part of the world, COVID-19 has obviously hit parts of Latin America really hard. We've all seen Brazil. We saw the news. Even today, their president coming down and testing positive for COVID-19. So my question is this. With Latin America affected by the coronavirus, how will that affect production? If we're able to start doing this move, which I think America is ready for it, poised for it, I think it's one of the few things that both parties, when we talk about D.C., and at the end of the day, we all know it's the bureaucracy and the red tape we have to get through to get it done, and you're leading the way from the private sector. But to answer this question, basically, how will what's going on with COVID-19 and Latin America affect production if we were able to start doing this?
Listen, Eric, the entire world is affected by this. The way I see it is how quickly we can manufacture and how quickly we can get a 40-foot container into the docks here in Miami. And that's usually 7 to 10 days, right? And that's on top of the speed that we manufacture versus 45 to 60 days we have to sail across the Pacific. So the speed of manufacturing, and again, the geographical proximity allows us to work much faster and allows us to look at Latin America as a potential region for us to at least move some, if not most, of our production down. The fact that COVID has hit, yes, it has hit, and it's hit everywhere, but there's processes and protocols in place, and there's ways that we can have oversight as to how things are being handled and managed there because of the ease of travel, the ease of communication with these different institutions and companies that are down there.
Perfect. I love that. And I think that's important because folks, number one, forget how close Latin America really is. I mean, you said it perfect. 2.5-hour flight from here to Colombia. That's crazy to think. I mean, it's super closer than flying to China. I can tell you there's no...
It's actually, sorry to interrupt you, but it's actually, for me, the majority of the time, and I tend to travel once a month down there, it's easier for me to get down to Colombia than it is to get up to LaGuardia.
That's crazy. That's an amazing stat right there. There you go. Shout out LaGuardia. I think you're the first person to say something positive about LaGuardia I've ever talked to.
I don't think it's positive, but all right.
You gave him. So let me ask you this: as a business owner, obviously your business is based here in the U.S. So how do you rate the government's handling of the coronavirus so far? I know this is a question that's not political at all. I'm wondering as a business owner, because we all have opinions depending on what we do, on how we've rated the government as a whole. I mean, how do you rate their performance so far?
Let me give you my 2 cents here. I think we acted too soon, too fast. And what happened was that you locked up people in their house for 2-3 months, and you create what I call pent up anger, and then you unleash them and you open it up. You're gonna have consequences. The timing of it was off. The shutdown should have been in sync with the wave, right?
Yeah.
Rather than jumping based on what others were doing, number one. Number two, a lot of contradictory advice was given. When in February, during my last travel, I was the only guy wearing a mask at MIA, Miami International Airport. I was being looked like some weirdo. A mask is a mask. A mask is known to cover. A mask is known to help, and you just wear a mask. Why would you not have indicated to everybody, wear a mask from day one, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to add into the equation the fact that we're the greatest nation on earth, right? We're not a communist nation where we lock people in the houses and we take away their rights and their liberty and everything else. So you got to balance that out. So to answer your question, I mean, there was a warning. We could have been prepared. We could have listened to the experts. And we could have perhaps timed it, but then again, this is someone that is seeing this for the first time in their life. Nothing like this has ever happened. And then again, I would have applied the more practical aspects of any plan to it, which is just cover your mouth. And you do that. You do that when you go into hospitals. Why? Because there's a lot of infections and viruses and bacteria going on in hospitals. That's what you do when you have a virus and you have a bacteria. You cover your mouth.
Yeah.
You cover your mouth. You cover your mouth when you sneeze. It's common sense.
Wow.
So just use common sense. So
it is funny that we are the big movement in 2020 has been telling people to wash their hands and cover their face when they sneeze. It's pretty weird that we're telling adults that. That's like common sense from like childhood. I know all of my kids. Now it feels like we're reminding people. But anyway, so let's talk about this from a business side for you. So how do business owners keep afloat during these hard times? I know they're trying to open back up. A lot of states are shutting back down. Obviously, the worst affected are our restaurant and bars across the country. That is the first thing. All governors are shutting down. I know California was not the first. Texas was, followed by California, and you're seeing even New Jersey has recently done it where they've closed indoors dining and bars.
And Florida will close tomorrow as well.
So
I have friends in the restaurant business, and they're restaurateurs. I am not. I can't give you advice as a restaurateur because that's not my forte. This is an event that has to somehow trigger significant creativity. It has to bring out the entrepreneurial side of a lot of these restaurateurs. Unfortunately, many of them are not going to be able to survive, and it's extremely, extremely sad to see the amount of jobs that are going to be lost. There's only so much that you can sustain by shipping, by sending takeouts, and having people pick up. So to give you advice as to how to survive not being in the restaurant business, it's very hard. I do think there's opportunities to reinvent yourself, to come together as an industry, to be able to cut costs, to be able to deliver do deliveries and takeouts without having so much overhead, without having so much restaurant. There's definitely opportunity for you to be able to negotiate your rents with your landlords. So there's things that can be done. But again, a lot of individuals are afraid of contracting it by eating food from places that are not their home kitchens.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, we have seen that across the country. So let me ask you this, Jonathan. One of the big things we've been talking about on our show, and a lot of Americans are talking about, is what founders, CEOs, and leaders are doing for their staff during COVID-19. A lot of companies had furloughs, people have been around, and it's really pushing CEOs and leaders. It's exposing the bad ones. Clearly, you're seeing a lot of people coming out going, oh my God, here we are, I have no childcare, I have nothing, and it's like some bosses just flat don't care. It's like, here's the bottom line, this is what you have to do. It's an interesting give and take because childcare shutting down isn't necessarily any of our fault. That's an overreaction that we did, that they're still learning, CDC and all those things. So out of most people's control is childcare. It's not something. It's like kids being out of school. I've got two, and I have no idea when they're going back to school. No one's told us. We're voting on different plans. But so what are you doing for your staff? As a leader of a company with some amazing team members, what are you doing for your staff during this time?
It's a really good question. What this virus did was pretty much accelerate what was bound to happen, right? These commutes on 95 or 105 or whatever interstate you have to take for an hour a day each way, 2 hours a day, to sit in front of a computer and put numbers in and maybe have one or two meetings doesn't make any sense. So you are now being forced to implement technology that some companies, many of which are in the space similar to ours in the e-commerce space, have had already in place. You're noticing that you don't have to have a 9 to 5, get in your car and drive to work an hour each day to be successful. You need to have accountability, and you need to have KPIs, and you need to have a team that will be responsible for the tasks that they're assigned. Doesn't matter what part of the world they are. You've seen people working remotely from way back. So what am I doing for my team? My team is allowed to work remotely. We do come to the office since we have the operations. We have a lot of demand right now for the product. So we have to oversee the logistics, but the way we do it is we do intervals. So only a couple of us come in on Monday, some come in on Tuesday, and we rotate. Everybody has a fixed time that we meet 2 or 3 times a week. We have Zoom calls. We hold ourselves accountable. If we don't, then we call each other out. And by doing that, we become much more efficient. And I've seen productivity increase because there's not so much time being wasted on going into people's office and talking to people and schmoozing by the water cooler.
I love that you say that because that's true. I think more work gets done, and I've been reading these surveys that people are seeing that the traditional 8-hour workday or 12-hour workday has actually been proven to be cut shorter because people without distractions sitting at home, when they go into a room or they say they don't have multiple rooms in their house, they shut the door and they entertain their kids or whatever. If they team up on it, shut the door, put headphones on, they can cram through work that used to take them all day. Some people are saying that they could shave 2 days off of work because they're able to get through all of their emails, everything that they need to get through in such, because there aren't the distractions, the water cooler and the typical.
Absolutely, but keep in mind, if you are working from home, then be prepared to answer a Slack message at 6, 7 o'clock at night.
Sure.
Be prepared to get a message at 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning. The 9 to 5 is abolished,
yeah.
But there's a new modus operandi. You get to write and contact each other at whatever hour, at whatever time, if something needs attention.
Awesome, and I think people agree to that. I think more and more people are happy with that. They have the freedom to make those appointments. If you can go to a dentist appointment, get your hair cut, you could go do those things, but you should be able to respond. I mean, we expect it from our team. Obviously, I mean, we've always kind of done that where I've never monitored hours. Like, hey, you know when you get your work done, but if I ping you at 8 o'clock,
right.
I mean, obviously 8 o'clock my time, no, don't answer if you're on the East Coast, that's 11 o'clock. But if I ping you after hours, I shouldn't get like, dude, why are you bugging me? It's like, if I didn't hear from you at 2 p.m., I'm not hounding you. But if I have a question, please respond in Slack. And so far, no issues. And I think a lot of people like the freedom of, I mean, it builds a lot of trust. I think some traditional employers and traditional founders are struggling with the, especially if they're micromanagers, they struggle with it. They're like, oh my God, I can't see what you're doing.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, Eric, so there's the flip side of the coin. If you're in manufacturing and you have personnel overseeing quality, overseeing machines, overseeing technical, you need staff to come in. To have staff, you have a hierarchy, you have managers, you have managers, you have the quality people. So you do need, in certain instances, for people to come to work, especially if we're discussing and we're talking about bringing manufacturing back. You're going to want that.
Yeah.
But if you're coming in and you're part of the marketing team, or you're part of the sales team, or you are part of the accounting team, and you can run and input numbers from your home, the same that you're going to do from the office, or do sales from your phone, which is now we now have supercomputers in the palm of our hand. If you're able to do that, then it's not necessary. So you can always have essential workers come in. Non-essential workers can be more productive because they're working around the clock without having to shower, change, get on 95, get on accidents, and all this other fun stuff that happens during your commute.
I love that you brought that up. So before you go, I want to cover this because you are a phenomenal business leader, and I want to talk about businesses. Let's talk about how those businesses can stay afloat. And I know you and I have talked off camera about this, talking about what vendors can do with their payments, and you even have some good thoughts on what our friends at Amazon, who, no matter if it's a pandemic or not, are absolutely killing it. You know, our friend Jeff Bezos, not only did he get a divorce to start 2020, and he lost half of his assets, which still he was a billionaire, and his ex-wife is a billionaire. But I just read that he made all that money back and 10x'd it because of the pandemic. So I know you have some thoughts on Amazon. So let's talk about how companies can reduce unnecessary expenditures and you know, some tips that you have for how they can do that.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you bring this up. Amazon is a phenomenal company. It really shows what we're capable of doing in this country, and no questions, hands down, a fascinating company. But listen, they could cut some slack to small businesses. They can reduce these seller fees. They are charging an absurd amount of fees for small businesses to sell on their platforms. If you cut a small percentage of those fees, you're pretty much giving back what the payroll protection plan gave you by reducing the fees. And I'm not saying, listen, Amazon, don't charge us anymore, but reduce the fees for the remainder of the year for another 6-7 months. Allow small businesses like ours to flourish by reducing some of these fees, right? Number one. Number two, no one's driving, no one's flying, so gas is cheap. Call the post office, call FedEx, call UPS, tell them you want your rates lower. They're obviously offsetting the cost because they're paying less for gasoline, so why don't they transfer that cost on to you, the consumer, right? Number three, Stripe, PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. They make a living out of small businesses like us. It's time they reduce their fees too, from 2 or 3%. Bring it down, eliminate them. Give us a grace period of 6-7 months, the remainder of the year, without processing fees. Because without small businesses, without businesses alike, there is no Visa, MasterCard, American Express. So they have to sacrifice. They have a lot of money. And going back to Amazon, I'm pretty sure they'll be just fine if they're able to waive all these fees.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on folks with their CRMs and ERPs and marketing software? You know, we are talking about manufacturing. I know we're getting people back to work, but what's your thoughts on, I mean, should folks be finding different platforms to work on? I mean, we all know that there's I'm not going to mention them just because I don't want any heat from their users, but there's a very big CRM out there. Great company. I'm a big fan of their CEO and founder, but it's a really expensive platform. So when it comes to manufacturers and what you're doing, any last thoughts on where folks should cut. They should cut corners or look for something a little. Should companies be doing that?
I got you, and I know what you're talking about. Yes, they're expensive, but there's a lot. There's a lot of options, fortunately, and you're going to see a resurgence of these options come about now, simply because this is the future. You do not want to cut corners where the future is headed, and the future is headed in platforms and technology. You do want the features. You want to obviously what is free is only going to get you so far, but you definitely want the features, and you definitely want to deploy technology. But you might want to discuss with each company what their features are, what their costs are, and compare them to others. Compare them to others, because a lot of these companies offer the same features. Yeah. And if you're able to identify exactly what it is that you need, you might not need to be paying extra for specific features that are intricate and elaborate, and they're not applicable to your business.
That makes sense.
So look into these different platforms.
Oh, awesome.
Compare them. And you're going to see more and more of them. And we can go into platforms like Zoom, Skype, GoToMeeting, Slack, WhatsApp. They're all video conferencing. Each one has its pros and its cons. You analyze each one, and then you pick the one that's more suited for your business.
I like that. I think that's solid advice, because so many small business owners and even growing businesses are trying to see where can they make those cuts, right? I mean, you don't want... I think one of the big things that I've seen, and I know you're one of these leaders that falls into this category, is you're willing to sacrifice yourself, your own salary, your own pay. I mean, and I'm on record as saying the same thing for my own company, that I'm going to make sure I don't want to lay anybody off. And we've been blessed that we haven't had to do that. I know some other companies that are the same thing, where the CEO's like, look, I'm not going to take it. It was easy. It reminded me of startup days again, where I wasn't getting paid anyways, and it was going back into the company. But I'd rather make sure people are earning a living that are working hard for doing that. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on before we close, like 2 or 3 things that business owners can do to make sure their company stays afloat during these tough times?
Take care of your employees, they'll take care of you, number one. Right? Take care of your customers. Your customers are your number one asset. Right? Mm-hmm. And deliver quality product. Stop putting low cost and cheap materials in front of quality, right? So customers, first of all, your employees, your customers, and then focus on quality, deliver quality. People are getting tired of these cheap, ineffective products and services that are offered there without real customer support, without real traceability. You're gonna have to mitigate that and find a way to be more reliable, right?
Yeah, I like that. That's perfect. Well, that is great, Jonathan. We want to thank you for coming on today. You've given us so much insight, and it's actually good to have an expert who has never had to trade with China and has an effective method. I know that's what people like hearing, because we're so caught up in the media is not going to go out and run out and tell all of us this is the fix, because China's involved in so much in our country, in our trade. And I know we have tariffs, but we need to be safe. It's better to work with our allies. And I'm sorry, but a flight that's easier to get, like you said, it's easier to get to Colombia than it is to LaGuardia, which is very true. Try leaving LaGuardia and just getting to Manhattan is a journey all by itself. I never knew that an airport right across a river was so difficult. It's like, I've had friends, actually, true story, land at LaGuardia and land at JFK, and the JFK people, we beat the LaGuardia
right.
people.
No, I've been down that path before. Listen, we can get into the China scenario down the road, but it's complicated. Point is, if we've been able to do it for over 40 years, so can anybody else.
Absolutely.
There's no need to buy from your adversary when you have loyal allies that are actually also going through a hard time. That could use the economic boost.
That is an understatement. So I want to thank you for joining us today. We'll have to have you back
on.
Thank you. When China pops back up, or if we have any questions, obviously we'll have you back on from time to time to cover this topic. You are the resident expert, and when we have our Latin America questions, we're coming to you. You seem to know
Anytime.
more than we know. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining. And if anybody wants to connect with Jonathan and find out more about what Jonathan's doing, simply swipe down on our YouTube or on this feed while you're watching, and you'll be able to click and find out about Jonathan's company. Make sure to follow them on social media and ask them any questions that you may have, or if your company would like to work with Jonathan and his brand. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us today, and we'll be back after these messages. Thank you for watching this episode of To The Point. As always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell, and we thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you know someone that we should be interviewing on our show, or you'd like to be a guest on our show, feel free to email us at hello@tothepointtv.com. We'd love to have you as a guest on our show. Please go ahead and feel free to follow us on Twitter at ToThePointTV. We'd love to see you on Twitter. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram. We're huge fans of Instagram here at To The Point. So give us a follow at To The Point and a like and a share so you can see the guests that are coming up on IG. And that is at ToThePointTV. It's not .com, it's just at ToThePointTV. So confusing with all these names taken. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know what we're going to get ready to go. But before you do that, if you're a fan of Facebook and you spend a lot of time on there, go give our Facebook page a like and a follow and share it with your friends. And keep in mind, if you can't get to your YouTube, you can always watch us live at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern weekdays. We appreciate to see you there. And as always, my favorite peeps, you're here on the YouTube, and we love you here on YouTube. So make sure that you drop in and you can see every episode and never miss an episode, right? Because if you smash that subscribe button, give it a like, and flick that bell, you flick that bell, you get notified before everyone else when we drop the latest episode or subscription. And as a reminder, all of our segments and shows go live weekdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. So you will be the first to catch them, and you don't want to miss them. Go check out our library. They are broken down by hashtags, so you will never miss an episode. On behalf of our entire team here at To The Point, we want to thank you for tuning in, because if it wasn't for viewers like you, we wouldn't have a show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be strong, be smart, and God bless America.
Let's get to the point.